Thomas, you will be asked, what are you hearing?
Right. Give us a second as we go live. I'm just going to press record as well in a moment. Uh, let's see how we get on. Going to record us. Welcome everyone. We're just getting going, so just give us a second here. There we go. Yeah, all looking good. So thanks everybody for joining our Coaching from the Soul this evening, our light-hearted conversation. If you caught us in our little segue from our little chatting to going live, you'll see that we were having a lot of fun and we've not even started yet. This is our fifth in our series, so we've been kind of getting into the flow as well as embracing, let's see what comes when we join. So yeah, you're in for an interesting ride this evening. And I think the conversation we were having just before we came on was this idea of it's not always possible to see it when you're in it. That was one of the things that came to mind. And that Jen kindly shared some quotes ahead of us joining about one of them was from Robert Allen. Your current thinking got you here. Only new thinking will get you out. And that, I think, I was reflecting how I'd been for a walk actually just before this session, and how I'd been a bit stuck earlier today, my thinking, and how exactly that, like sometimes thinking can be a bit like quicksand and we're in it wanting to get out of it, not realizing that the thinking that we're in is the thing that's causing us to go deeper. And I knew, I guess, that, well, come on, Graham, like what helps you typically? We'll just go 6 minutes round the block once, and the moment I step outside, like there's a different world out there. And so actually, that's what happened. Like I went outside and I was like, oh, okay. And suddenly some of that thinking that was causing my mood shifted, and I ended up in a different reality. So I think the quote about, your current thinking got you here, but only new thinking is going to get you out. Like my own experience has been, well, that new thinking typically comes not from piling new thinking on top of the existing thinking that is stuck. Like quicksand is a really great analogy for it, I think. But actually recognizing that, oh, there's an opportunity to step somewhere else. And just by stepping somewhere else, and that could be a walk or it could be doing anything, takes me into like a new place and a bit of a happier place. So that's my starter for 10. I heard Edwin give a little there, so I'm gonna pick on him first, and then yeah, just see what was coming up for you, Edwin, when I was talking about that.
Yeah, when I actually first logged in and kind of hear the bits and pieces that what you guys were commenting on, and the moment John said what he said, as far as it's hard to see when you're in it, what really came to me was seeing beyond my personal thinking. And I've recognized that much of my own suffering comes from taking my personal thinking so seriously, too seriously at times. And I get caught up in my habitual patterns of thoughts. And that completely limits my own potential and obscures my well-being. And I can feel it. I can feel it not being me. And as I go into this kind of a further exploration, um, what really it comes to it involves seeing beyond these habitual patterns and recognizing that I am not my thoughts. And when I can observe my thinking without getting entangled in it, it allows me to experience a greater freedom and flexibility in how I respond to life circumstances. And I'm saying this because I get caught up in my thinking. And what I've noticed is that it's taking me less time to recognize and to step out of it and come back to living into the present, which I believe is, it has helped me to not to go through that rabbit hole and recognize it sooner and get back into the present sooner, without experiencing all the chaos that I used to experience before. All that thought created, reality with all those feelings of regret and worry and fear, because of what I've done, or what I should have done instead, and that has changed for me. I still get caught up on it, but it feels a lot less frequent. It doesn't last that long. But I'll tell you the one thing that I think has changed it for me. Even when I do get caught up, I don't give myself shit for it anymore. And to me, that's becoming more of a kind of a carefree thinking from that perspective. So that's where I am right now with that.
Yeah, thank you. I like that. It's the noticing, isn't it? And yeah, welcome to Dennis, who's also joined us in our audience. Yeah, I think for me it is that sometimes like just changing the environment for me is the thing that gets me out of it. But I agree with you. I think I can see I'm in it sometimes, and the benefit I think is the more we can see we're in it, then there's an opportunity to get out of it, out of that. I think the topic we're on today is kind of a bit of this stuck thinking and how we don't always see it until we see it, and then there's the opportunity to move on. I'm interested just looking across our group, what other people think about that one.
I'd like to take it up, Graham, if that's okay. And I love where Edwin's saying that when he sees it takes less time whenever he's in it, and he's in his personal thinking and it's annoying him, whatever, it takes less time to get out of it. It takes less time to see it. And I was reflecting on I had 2 days of being in it, and yeah, partly did see that I was in it, but it really did take me to leave the situation, to recognize what I was doing to myself. And I'm not as kind to me as Edwin is to Edwin. So that's a lesson I'm going to learn as well. But what also struck me is that for the last couple of weeks, I've been busying around my office, and I've been busy in getting ready for an event that I'm running in September. And I haven't been doing a lot of working or coaching. My coaching has my coachees maybe nearly all gone on holidays. And I was spending time with people. We're talking about it's our thinking, and we can see it's our thinking. I was spending time with people who haven't the first idea that it's their thinking. To them, oh, it's our thinking. Ah, that's an interesting idea. It can't be true, but it's an interesting idea. And there was part of me wanted to convert them. There was part of me wanted to let them see they were wrong, but there was also a part of me that was a bit wiser than that. And no, don't go down that road, John. Just enjoy the glass of wine, enjoy the walks, and enjoy the good meals, enjoy the company of your friends. Don't go there. Don't go there. And that worked, apart from 2 occasions where I went there. And it didn't work to go there. So we sit here and we talk on the screen to each other, and we understand what we're saying. But for some people who have yet to have an insight, it's a different language, it's a different world. And one of the worlds that one of my friends referred to is, yeah, that's okay, but in reality, this is what's true. And on reflection, on the way back up, it was a 4-hour drive home from where I was. It was a brilliant time to not be in my thinking. It was a brilliant time to be in my wisdom, and a brilliant time to reflect on just how other people see the world, and to marvel at that, and to be appreciative of that, but also to recognize that how zealous I can still be to try and help people who made no request for help whatsoever. And I thought that part of me was gone 5 years ago, but it hasn't. So that's my contribution to date.
Yeah, I think well, and yeah, my own thought, I suppose, is it doesn't. Yeah, we all have to see things for ourselves, don't we? I think that's like what we've been talking about so far. Like, yeah, and sometimes that's spotting something or noticing it. Sometimes that's changing the environment. Like mine was going outside, yours was going for a drive, but that's enough sometimes to allow a bit of wisdom back in and a bit of space to reflect, and then suddenly, yeah. And I can look back and think, there might have been an easier way back to my quicksand. Like, I was putting myself further and further into that. But it isn't always possible to see it till we come out of it. I'm intrigued kind of across our group what's coming up for anyone else, if you want to kind of pop yourself off mute, or if anyone's got any questions as well, feel free to pop them in the chat too.
Oh, chat. Is that cool? So what comes up, well, kind of segue off of John there about being zealous of helping or converting people. I just came to the real kind of an insight where it seems to me that people, I was just thinking about my wife and myself this weekend, where we came from a really wonderful spiritual event. And I was angry for some reason. It didn't really matter. I was just kind of angry. And my wife said to me, "I thought you would calm down after this." And I said, "Why would you think that?" I said, "Because I expect you to be different." And I said, "Well, that's just it. You expect me to be different." And I'm not. And it just struck me, it was like most people actually operate from the outside realm. That means the outer world has to change. In order for the outer world to change, then we have to kind of change the outer world. And I was explaining once to my wife, I said, it's like being on a Titanic, and you have all this subconscious ocean, and we're trying to kind of shift all the lawn chairs around the Titanic while it sinks. It doesn't really work that way. And an insight came, it's like, can the thinker think itself out of thinking? And if there's a thinker who is thinking, or what's thinking, what's causing the thinking? And there was a time when a friend said, the mind cannot escape the mind. So if we're all operating for the most part in that realm where, especially in the West, where we've been kind of conditioned to thinking ourselves out of problems as we create those problems in our thinking, we're in a dilemma. And that's where I'm just going to leave it at. Thank you, guys. I just wanted to share that.
Sorry, I just have to say thanks, Nookie. You just lobbed in a lovely, mild hand grenade and said, "I just want to leave that with you guys." Good man. So I'm going to leave it with them too, Nookie. That's a good idea.
I love the hand grenade, and then I find myself thinking, okay, well, if we're facilitating, do I need to comment on the hand grenade? But yeah, can we think ourselves out of what we've created ourselves through thinking? Like that was a good hand grenade of, yeah. Well, and we started, didn't we, with this quote today, like your current thinking got you here, only new thinking can get you out. But it makes me wonder actually whether it's not new thinking, but it's the lack of that thinking, or it's something else that actually gets us out. You know.
Can I also just add what is occurring to me right now is that in some respects it's nearly nothing gets us out. In other words, the more we do to get out, the more it's our thinking trying to get us out of our thinking. So nothing gets us out. I'm not trying to out depth Noki there, but I do think it's nothing. Nothing gets us out.
You know what it comes to me though is that when you are in it, it's hard now that we're kind of deconstructing that. It's hard to see it, but we never stop not feeling it. You know how you're feeling based on how you're thinking, but we're not used to, at least myself, I'm not used to really listen to it, to my system. Because my system tells me when I'm out of it, when I'm in it. But I used to maybe subconsciously just ignore it. I used to say, though, now I'm pissed. And I'm pissed because, and now I recognize it. Hold on, I'm getting pissed. It's because the story that I'm making up about what's happening here. And that moment of that thought, it brings me back to the present. So I find myself not doing anything to get out of it, just recognizing it and noticing it. And because what you had said, John, and start off with the Noki, that's the piece that I'm thinking that I was going to say I'm getting good at it. No, that's the piece that is coming is more noticeable for me now. And it seems to happen almost like in a split second. And I laugh because the phrase that I use, it's not mine, but it makes sense to me. It says, you just start to believe your own shit. And it brings me back. It really, and I start laughing, and like somebody looks at me like, dude, we're arguing about something. What the hell are you laughing about? And I'm recognizing that the moment I recognize and I listen to what I'm feeling, it brings me back to I'm creating it. And just by noticing it, it dissipates. It loses the grip on me. And I want more of that shit, man.
And as you've all been talking, I've been reminded of a lived experience I've had the last couple of weeks, whereas it's felt like I've been on a treasure hunt where I've been given clues just to the next stage, a little nudge here and a little nudge there, which has gradually unfolded in a way that I'd have never logically worked out. Well, to get to point X, I will have to go via all these different routes. And it culminated in me sitting and getting the opportunity of observing someone else do a demo of coaching from this inside out understanding. And because it was being recorded, I went, you know what, I'm just going to let that wash over me and let the feeling wash over me. And I've not yet listened to the recording yet, so I have no idea what was actually said, but my lived experience was that there was something that I know from the feeling around it has been feeling really heavy. And one of the stops earlier on was that I'd said to someone, oh, I don't need to unpack that. And I didn't need to do anything with it, with just letting this feeling wash over me. But when I came back to the real world, in inverted commas, that was such a refreshed feeling that the heaviness of that had gone. It was like it was sort of that world I'd made up over that situation had seemed so real and so solid to me. And it was like something, like I'd built it out of sandcastles, but was at that level where it could seem that that was all that was in front of it. And something had just the tide had come in and washed it all away. And went, oh, that's the power of thought. At some level, I'd obviously made up in my head, oh, it needs this to be small enough for me to be able to see round it, to see that, see wisdom and that behind it. And what was really cool was that it was only at that point when I noticed the feelings and sort of started putting all this treasure hunt backwards. I went, oh, you know what? A few weeks ago, I was just pondering, oh, if wisdom could give me a gift, what would it be? And then, because nothing had come to me immediately, I'd completely forgotten that. And yet, all this has unfolded to give me that lived experience of that thought without me having to unpack it, without me having to do anything, just disappeared. It's just another example for me of what noticing and listening and being aware of just what's in front of you. I don't have to work it all out. It's not on me to direct my attention. That was what was occurring to me.
I love that. I'm looking again at your and I see Roisin's probably going to say something in a second, but it sent me
No,
some
go ahead.
quote before, and I'm sure that all these quotes have names I can never pronounce, but the one that spotted was like this: the real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes, which was Marcel Proust. Don't know if I got that right. And yeah, that felt a bit like, again, pointing to this same thing about just seeing things differently, and seeing that there's a wisdom, and I think Edwin made the point that, oh, actually the feeling like there is something that's telling us we're stuck, do something different, Go on, Roisin, I think you were about to hop in there.
No, I love that quote, Graham. Thank you. And I think just on the back of that quote as well, it reminds me of the kind of things don't matter until we kind of add matter to them, or until we give them matter. And that reminds me of the Sid Banks quote that if the only thing people learned was not to be afraid of their own experience, that alone would change the world. And I think for me, kind of my understanding of that quote's changed over recent months to kind of from thinking, oh, this understanding and understanding what thoughts are gonna help me feel less stressed or less angry, or they're gonna help me feel the feelings I want to feel and not feel the ones I don't want to feel, or I'm going to be able to get out of the feelings I don't want to feel more quickly. And I think actually now I see, oh, there's nothing to do or nothing to get out of when I'm feeling them, because it's actually completely okay to feel them. And that's part of being human, that's part of the design. And I think to me, that's what the kind of Sid Banks quote has led to. It's not so much now I feel less kind of negative emotions, but they're only negative when I kind of judge them as that, or when I label them as that. They're only troublesome if I think there's something I have to fix or something wrong with them. And kind of being able to see that even that's just a thought as well, and that's made up of thought, and how I'm feeling is how I'm feeling, and that's it. Like, full stop. And that's what's kind of been, I think, felt really freeing and really cool about this. And yeah, that's what's kind of been coming up to me, being reminded of that quote as kind of listening to you all.
Yeah, I love that. It points back to that, yeah, not attributing anything to anything. Like the more like going back to Noki's like little grenade of realizing that, oh, actually the place we put us was created by our own thinking in the first place. So yeah, as we get out of it, we'll stop. What's coming up for you now, Naoki, after I feel like it's really fair to come back to you after that little
Well, actually, it's like I have forgotten I did leave something in that with my wife. In that I said, because you guys actually kind of segued into it kind of beautifully. In what what I had said, I said less thinking, more feeling, and you guys were all into the feelings. Like, yeah, that's what it was. It was like less thinking and more feeling. What are we feeling in that moment when we're thinking? The thinker is kind of psychotic. It's like really, really, well, maybe it's just my own psychosis. I don't know. Maybe but it has no feelings. It just sees things in a way that's very cut and dry and like pragmatic and kind of ruthless. Whereas a feeling, if we're one's feeling kind of a really kind of empathetic level, one can feel another person so deeply. You can actually feel them, what they're going through. If they're going through a lot of pain, you can really feel that pain. And simultaneously, it's like if you can really feel a person's joy, you can really feel that too. But a thinker doesn't do any of that. It's just kind of it's like a razor, And I was thinking, it's like, what's coming up here? And what in that talk of the feelings, just this thought came in. Where can we kind of find that sense of feeling that's so deep that one can empathize with another person's state of being? And it's like just abide in the silence. And if we're in the silence, the appropriate thoughts will come, the appropriate actions will come, the appropriate feelings will come. Because in the silence, we're not thinking, we're not feeling, we're not doing anything. We're just abiding in presence. And that's, to me, kind of like the thing that gets us outside of the thinking and outside of the thoughts. In that state of silence, there is none of that. That's where the intelligence of the universe and wisdom of the universe and consciousness just kind of exists. That's what came up for me. And I was wondering, is that, who else feels that? Is that really more thoughts? Just, can we, let's test the waters.
As you're speaking then, Naoki, what came up for me is like the realization of how much of my feelings are actually my thoughts, and how much, if I go, oh, how am I feeling about that? I go to my thoughts. I don't go to what I feel. And I find that really interesting as a reflection, because so many of those thoughts are probably actually based on how I think I should be feeling about something. Like, oh, you've got a presentation. Well, society says you should feel nervous if you're doing a presentation. Or, oh, you're doing something in the dark. You should feel scared, and thinking, oh, I wonder how many of my actual feelings I've kind of felt and acknowledged, and how many I've just put there and assumed through thought. And it makes me really want to go, because I really think, like, I know now I can't trust my thoughts, and I don't trust my thoughts, but I really feel like I can trust my feelings. And it makes me want to be more present to the feelings, and not my thoughts that I think are the feelings, if that makes sense. But really, really pausing and tuning into how does it feel in my body, as opposed to what am I thinking about feels right now. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense, but that's really what came to me now because you're speaking is, I bet a lot of how I feel is really actually your thought as well. Um, mm,
Hmm. That made sense to me in this idea that what does society say I should feel in this moment? Like that feels like, yeah, I'm imagining parts of my day where I'll have felt stressed or something else, and I think as you're pointing, like instead of going, oh, but how do I actually feel about that? I think there's a lot of thinking that is, okay, well, the world would suggest that if you're in this predicament, then that feels like X, so it must be that. Like, yeah. And I think probably as we've talked about on some of these calls before, like there's that beauty, isn't there, of just wondering, like, is that really how it is? Or, yeah, you're like, can I trust this? Like just the slightest inkling is enough sometimes to get out of that and realize that, oh, that's not quite as much as it appears. Yeah.
reminds me of a story actually just a couple of months ago. I was going into a kind of new office for work, and like a few things had happened that morning, and I had to do a lot of waiting and get a new security pass and things like that. But it hadn't felt that much of a big deal. And when I got into the office, a colleague was retelling my morning to someone else and saying how stressful it was and how much of a nightmare morning I'd had. And I was going there like, oh really? Like I didn't feel that. I was like, no, really, it was fine, honestly. And then she told it again to someone and still said, oh, she's had a really stressful morning. I'm there going, it's quite a lovely morning. I got to sit in the sun. And it just made me realize like, oh, so much of what we maybe feel isn't, I suppose like when we've been listening to Michael Neal recently, he's almost gone, he's said a few times how many of our thoughts are our own thoughts and how many have we picked up along the way from somewhere else. And I think I'd like to spend some time kind of after this call, I might sit and ponder like how many of my feelings are my own feelings and how many are just because I've picked them up along the way and because, yeah, I feel like I should feel this certain way, or you can't possibly do a live stream on YouTube and feel calm and chill and unprepared. That can't be a thing. Um, yeah, yeah, I like that. Thanks, Graham.
Mm. It reminds me of the like separate reality of everything, doesn't it? Because you, me, and Jen had like a call where Jen talked to us, and then you and I sent our notes to Jen afterwards. And I remember Jen saying it was like two different people had listened to the call because our two sets of notes that were completely different. And that again speaks to like the translation that's going on, like in our minds when we're listening to something, like we're taking the bits that resonate for us, or yeah, I don't know, Jen, what could.
Yeah, just adding on to that, what was also really interesting for me is that my recollection of the call was yet again a different experience to the two sets of notes that you'd sent me. So yeah, that was really interesting. And as you were beautifully sharing there, it occurred to me that I somehow always know when I'm getting those nudges, and it turns up in different ways. And I strongly suspect that at times it's because I've not noticed a more subtle nudge, that there's a more obvious one there. But I know when it's a nudge and when it's my generated thinking, when it's my intellect trying to get involved. And sometimes I listen to that, but there's a different feel to it. And like a lot of the stuff with the formless, I don't know if I've got the words to describe it, but it just seems important to me to notice that there is the difference there.
Yeah, the subtleness of the nudges, I think, is what's coming up there.
And I'd like to throw in a theory that about feelings, and we're told to go with the feeling. I remember listening to a neuroscientist talk about all thought generates a feeling. So the instant you have a thought, whether it's conscious or subconscious, there is a hormone or an endorphin or some kind of chemical that is released in your system that gives you the feeling that you feel, whether it's excitement, whether it's fear, whether it's anxiety, worry, or whatever. And the thoughts that are sticky or quicksandy or ninja thoughts, they're all doing exactly that. It doesn't matter what adjective you put in front of the thought, it's the thought that's caused that feeling. But the feeling that comes from wisdom is not a feeling that comes from a thought. Wisdom is a place in my book that we can reside in when we're quiet, and the feeling from there is different than the feeling that comes from a thought. Even a happy thought or an excited thought or even a calm thought. I heard somebody describe that the wisdom feeling as neutral, which I kind of took issue with it because neutral didn't do it for me. But it's not the same feeling that you get from a thought. All thoughts generate a feeling, but the feeling from wisdom, from operating from a place of wisdom, is, as Jen talked about, once you start to go into the formless or the spiritual, you can't get the words to describe the feeling, but you can know the feeling, particularly when you're quiet, particularly when you're noticing it, particularly when you're living your life looking to notice it without really trying. It's a different feeling. So all thoughts generate feelings, but the thought or the feelings from wisdom is not thought generated. It's, call it, wisdom generated.
I love that. Well, and I think most of us on the call have been in an exercise before around coaching that kind of talked about, well, what do you know, like being a different feeling to what do you think you need to do, like, and there's like levels to it. And the idea that there is a knowing, I certainly know if I'm stuck on something that, like I said, like going for a walk is enough to get me out of whatever I was stuck on. And then there is a different sense. Feelings are the last carriage on a train of thought or something like that. Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. We're coming to the last 5 minutes of our time. I don't know if anybody has any questions. It's great to have a couple of live guests with us as well today. I don't know if anything's coming up for either of you, if you wanted to speak or pop it in the chat. I haven't been across to YouTube to look at what's happening there. So if there's any questions there, I'll reply after. Yeah, anything else coming up today before we close out our conversation?
I was just thinking that for me, I notice those nudges when I'm quieter more easily. And yet even when I've been up in my head, there's been occasions where looking back, I go, oh, I was getting that nudge. It may have turned up in a different way because apparently I wasn't listening to the more subtle approach, and they went with wisdom turned up more like a giant sledgehammer to get me to pay attention. But it's pointing to, for me, how this is how we are, this is how we're designed, how we live. And I think sometimes I at least can get really caught up in this, in a little batch of thinking that if I really understood this inside out understanding, I would do X, Y, Z. Or if I really use this inside out understanding, then it would be different. And it's impossible not to be in this inside out understanding because that's how we are. That's like saying, if I really understood this, I would be you know, I would be able to be using gravity. And you think, well, gravity just is. It's just how one of the phenomena of living how we do. So yeah, try not to forget, or even not give myself a hard time when I do forget that, I think is one of the things that I'm being reminded of.
Yeah. Did you have a thought there, Edwin? I saw you coming off mute.
Yeah, you know what, when Jim was just speaking about that, and we talk about feelings, and there is one feeling that I tend to get when I think that I found my true freedom, by understanding that my experience of life is created from within. And I don't know why that gives me everything. It's like this insight that it frees me from the need to control or to change external circumstances in order to feel okay. It empowers me to live more me authentically and allow my own inner wisdom to kind of guide me, and rather than allowing the external pressure and expectations to do that for me. And it feels like this freedom is not about escaping life's challenges, but rather embracing them, but with a new perspective, that allows me to see opportunities all around it. And to me, that feeling, every time I think like that, the feeling is around me. And it's almost like nothing else can throw me off until I get thrown off. But then I find it, I seem to find it again, because it never left me. It's always there. And every time I think like that, I take whatever control I have advocated to things and circumstances. And that's pretty cool to me.
I feel that one. Yeah. There's almost like a playfulness and a simplicity to it. Like, yeah. And it becomes, I think, a bit more of I know Roisin, when she often talks about how sneaky thoughts.
Sneaky
Like,
thoughts.
there's playfulness to going, oh, that's another thought. And oh, hang on, I'm no longer trying to get myself out of a maze of thought that I've created myself, like that. Yeah, there's a feeling to that. Well, thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure, as always, getting together today. I'm going to just stop our recording and thank everybody for joining, and we'll hang on if anybody wanted a quick chat after the session. Let me just turn this off. Thanks, everyone, for